Welcome back. Another week in English 338W, where we're talking about environmental rhetoric. You all are doing a fantastic job so far. I am really liking what I'm seeing both in Perusall and in Currents. Great work. I think we're also settling into a habit. That is a set of practices around rituals in the course that make up your grade and make up the kind of the learning we want to do in this course. Remember that the big principle here is that we're learning about rhetoric so that we can learn its tools and apply them to a variety of different texts that you would find in order to analyze how effective they are as mechanisms of communication. So far, we've talked about logos, ethos, and pathos. You got audience, context, speaker, purpose, other kinds of things like this. This week, we're going to do some more work with what's called framing. How you frame a piece is that you've made certain kinds of choices about the content that you're putting in and what you think about that content in order to lead readers to certain kinds of conclusions. So if we want to think about this in terms of climate change, the framing around climate change for years may, at least in the public imagination, might have been a polar bear on an ice floe. And that's heavy, heavy pathos. We don't want to see the polar bear die. But at the same time, it doesn't offer us any kind of movement to understand what we do about it, what the mechanism of social change is that we can use in order to induce certain kinds of changes in behavior in other people. And that's where rhetoric comes in. The framing of a piece will shape how we react to it and what actions we take based on it. So a couple of things really quickly I just wanted to go over. This might be a longer video than most, but I'm hoping to get through these things relatively quickly. I wanted to just shout out to a couple of students in the course for the excellent work that they're doing. And I will share my screen with you right now. So what you see immediately is our goal for this coming week, starting tomorrow. Remember, by Monday, what I'd like to see is that you have read Biljana Scott's Framing an Argument in Perusall and respond to at least twice to what you read, either to comment on an idea in Scott's article or to comment or question someone else's comment, right? Then what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to read two shortish articles about rare earth metals extraction. And this will get to our phones, to the lithium batteries that are in our phones that we might use every day. The first one called Dirty, Dangerous, and Destructive, the Elements of a Technology Boom in The Guardian, and The Dystopian Lake Filled by the World's Tech Lust at the BBC, both British sources, not necessarily just straight news articles, but as you'll see, they are focusing in on certain aspects of this issue, and the way that they do that we would call framing. Biljana Scott has a number of different terms that she'll use in order to organize her article, and it's about Obama's Nobel Prize speech, which is not necessarily interesting to us. It's more interesting to us to try to figure out, well, how is Scott looking at it? Okay, so very quickly, I just wanted to call attention to a couple of things. Here I am in section 2 of our Currents community, and a couple of things really stood out to me in people's responses. First was Josiah Serda, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, who said a number of interesting things. He said, after reading Ross Kelly's piece and gathering basic knowledge surrounding rhetorical concepts and terms, I found myself observing the framework of everything I was encountering. I'm a business major, he says, with an emphasis in marketing. Believe the food, agriculture, and land section of that would be very applicable to what I study. He gets to understanding an audience. Understanding an audience is vital to making an impact. And that is a direct relationship to his major, right? Audience, consumers, consumer marketing, branding, and so on. In the humanities, we'd call that audience analysis. The food, agriculture, and land section of this focuses on the audience in the way that it ponders the reader's knowledge and outlook on food waste. And then it also says Here's how to help reduce climate change. Okay, so though that's a specific mechanism Josiah is pointing out, where the author is making a connection, aligning their motives, their beliefs, their values about what needs to be done regarding climate change to the audience's actions and to the audience's beliefs. So that's good. Another thing that I thought was really interesting was Zachary Gutentag or Gutentag. And his post is coming up pretty quickly. Let me see, Zachary right here. Really interesting stuff where he says, demonstrating an appeal to logos right there, and an appeal to emotion, pathos. Now, what's interesting, of course, is that this is a science-based article. You'd think that they would be avoiding emotional appeals, and perhaps on the surface they are. They are not showing us that polar bear on the ice floe and asking us to feel deep feelings about an animal potentially dying. And that's why I responded to Zachary this way. I say, so you think they're using a fear appeal? That would be pathos for sure. But when I think fear appeals, I genuinely think scary images, like in a horror film designed to shock us. And Zachary, right on the ball, responded with this: when I visualize pathos, I see something that would scare me. I'm a huge horror film fan, so I don't get as scared when I view genuinely scary images. However, he says, those don't scare me as much as 300 plus tons of plastic in landfills around the world, increasing carbon emissions. Okay, so snap, touche, whatever you want to call it, Zachary. Awesome, awesome response. Okay, so here is section 1, and I wanted to call out really quickly Shannon Magana's post. Right away from the beginning, I noticed the use of logos, and yes, a lot of people said there was logos, and I'll talk about that just in a bit. Conveying logic such as the way we use the land, using evidence, claim and support, those are all mechanisms of logos appeal, right? So that was really good. I really liked that. And then a little further down, I believe was Iva Benbrook's response, using logos once again, the intentions of the article, and the writer's persona. Again, we wouldn't think necessarily that the Drawdown 2020 website would be filled with an authorial presence, right? Where you really felt what the author, who the author was and what they were trying to accomplish. But at the same time, Iva points out the writer sounds very educated and can articulate well. It makes it sound like he's a professional. So that is the persona, right? In different kinds of ways, we are organizing our writing around certain kinds of appeals. And an appeal to the audience would be a way of presenting information so that the audience could understand it. It seems to me that we are well conditioned in this society to look to scientists for trying to understand our universe and our place in it. And in this particular case, trying to figure out what we do next about climate change. So those specific textual clues that we look for, like we see right here, Iva quotes an author: as we consider the future of climate solutions, it matters how many people will be eating, moving, plugging in, building, buying, using, wasting, and all the rest. So that's great, right? We're pointing out specific pieces of language. So I wanted to say really quickly, let's get back to it. Week 3, you're going to watch the video that I'm making right now. You're going to read Scott's framing and argument. You're going to read these 2 pieces right here, and then you're going to post an extended response to the week 3 question by Thursday. Now, what is that post? The post is, we're going to work with Scott's ideas. I want you to read both of these articles, choose 2 of Scott's terms, and apply them both to these articles in order to do a little comparative work. When you, for example, look at the connotations, do you see more connotations here in the Guardian's piece than in the BBC piece? Do you see different kinds of connotations? Then do it for the other one. If it turns out to be appeals to authority, it doesn't have to be, because Biljana Scott talks about 10 different things if she talks about one. Then again, appeals to authority here in this first one and appeals to authority in the second one. How would you compare those two? Do they seem stronger or more effective in one? Are they more numerous in one? Do they have a different flavor to them? That's what we're talking about. Finally, what I wanted to show you really quick is that every once in a while I do leave a post on the main page. You see right here, logos. Lots of people talked about logos, and this is the last thing that I'll say. I went into a little more detail about logos because I thought it was important to understand that it's not just throwing facts at a situation. Throwing facts or evidence to build your case is great, but there's a lot more to logos than just that. As you see in these two videos, if you've got time, watch them. We do more than just say, look at the logos here. We try to figure out what kinds of evidence the author relies on, where those sources came from, and if they're credible. In terms of content, we think about, okay, so what issues is this author trotting out? Are there other issues at play? What's in and what has gotten left out of this particular argument? We ask things like, well, is this piece organized logically? That is, does it seem like a reasonable organization of material to lead with the global and then, for example, go to the local, or the opposite? We can talk about that. In terms of genre, does it trigger a kind of a memory of other articles that we've read in the past that perhaps use a problem solution format or something else like that? Those can seem reasonable to us too. Then finally, the actual logic, what you might remember from your critical thinking course, I'm talking about the fallacies, right? So what do we got? Rhetorical and logical fallacies. There's some great ones here, and I will check it out for you. I'm going to go back to, yes, I'm going to go back to that right here, you see. So very cool, all kinds of appeals to authority, appeals to tradition, to nature, to pity, anecdotal evidence, and so on. So what do we got? An interesting week in which most people, I think, are settling into the course and doing the things that are required. If you have any questions about the stuff that we're covering, the issues involved, or if you just have nuts and bolts questions about Perusall or Google Currents or other things like that, remember, I'm always available to you via email, and I have drop-in hours once a week. So good job, everyone. Keep it up. And I will talk to you via email. Thank you.